You did it. You
All right. Yes. 14 Nisan. Hayom Yom. I have the Chayenu this week.
And
I'm
you're going to
traveling.
start with the Refuah Shleimus, as usual.
Yeah, we're going to start with the first thing. Thanks very much. Go right ahead.
Devorah Rachel bat Miriam Chava. Yes.
Refuah Shlema b'Korev. Mamas.
Baruch
Who
ben
else?
Yamin ben Rachel Blima. Tzivia Chaya
Yes.
bat Leah Masha. Ziva bat Frida.
Okay. Refuah Shlema b'Korev.
Man.
Anybody else?
Everybody else.
Small group today. Small group. Okay. The 14th of Nisan. The search for chametz takes place after the evening service, so everybody's way past that. In the household of the Rebbe, it was customary not to appoint the Rav as an agent to sell the chametz, but rather to sell him the chametz, confirming the transaction, even in such a case, that he should be a fully responsible guarantor. My revered father, the Rebbe Rashab, used to be present when the Shrur Matzah was baked after midday on the eve of Pesach, which is what was done by the Rebbe here as well. He would join in the Hallel that is customary recited at that time, but would interrupt his recitation, even in the midst of a chapter, to give directions regarding the kneading, the baking, and the like. So today, in Lessons in Tanya and in Tanya, we are doing the first day of Yontif, because we did yesterday. So we're on the 15th. And that begins in here in Lessons in Tanya on page 589. And over here, it begins, where does it begin? Yeah, on page Nun Zion, pretty much in the middle. The line begins with Vehine, which is the portion for the first day of Pesach. And I thought we would do 2 days today and be right on smack for Chol Hamoed, but I can't because I have to run to make a siyum. I'm a firstborn. And so we'll do the first day of Yontif today, and then first day Chol Hamoed, we'll have to catch up. Second day Yontif and first day Chol Hamoed. All right. Vehine, behold, take a look. Afmisha Poga.
No, Shagam.
I'm muting you. Something bothered me. I was about to read.
Sorry.
I was about to read, but I got interrupted here. Vehine. Afmisha Gam b'moiche u'machmus u'b'machshavtoi. So even one that also in his brain and in his thought, enumargish shum yira. Right? We're speaking about yira tato here. And he's thinking about it, but he doesn't have the feeling in his brain and in his heart. Enumargish, yeah. Shum yira ubusha, both of them actually. Yira ubusha, busha is yira in law. He doesn't feel any yira, just feeling fear of separating himself or herself from Hashem. Ubusha, which I'm going to translate here as insignificance. The word means shame. He doesn't feel that he's a nothing in the face of everything. Why is that? Because of the low level of his soul, from the place in which it's hewn out, from the lower levels of the Yud Sfiras of Asiyah. We spoke about this the other day, a little bit more at length, that everybody's soul is hewn. It's a part of God, right? And hewn is a great word, because imagine a piece of marble, and what you're doing in cutting the facets of the marble is you're revealing a certain aspect that's latent in the marble. And that's a way of looking at our souls. When we say our soul is a chelik elikah, I think it's a beautiful way to think about it, it's hewn out from the allness, and therefore it participates in the allness all the time, even though it's now become a distinctive entity. So it could be that one's soul is hewn from a relatively lower level. So Alpha Plakain, nevertheless, nevertheless, since you have the conscious intentionality, at least in your service, even though you're not yargish, you may not feel it, right? That's the word we said, even though it may not yargish, it ain't no margish, but you're thinking about it, and you're miskaven, to serve the king. So this is a complete avoida. Ki hayira v'havoida nechshavas l'shtei mitzvahs. So here's an interesting thing, that yiras Hashem, and avoida, and service of Hashem, are considered halachically like two mitzvahs, minyan tariyad, amongst the 613. The enim was zu b'zu, and they don't impede one the other. In other words, if you're just doing it, and here we always come back to this, masa hu ha'ikar, you are yotze. You're not impeded from having fulfilled the mitzvah for the fact that you may not be doing it with some revealed yira or ava, but yira we're speaking about in this case. And in addition, Shabbat, in truth, Mekayim gam mitzvahs yira, one does fulfill the mitzvah of yira, just that you think about it. As he said earlier, even though you may not be feeling it, just that you think about it. Because at this time, when you're thinking about it, I'll call upon him, at least in your brain, the fear of heaven is upon you, I'll call upon him. Like the fear of an ordinary human being, an ordinary flesh and blood person, Edyet, ordinary, Lapachas at least, She'enu Melech, who's not a king, Amabit Allah, like let's imagine you're in a situation and you're doing something or thinking of doing something that's not so toward, as they say in English, not so I. And someone is looking at you who's not a king, just an ordinary person, Amabit Allah, is looking at you. So an average person would stop from doing this, from doing something which is not proper in one's eyes. It's a natural, caught in the act, and wasn't doing it. Shazu nikra yira, and this is called yira. As he said, Rabbi Yochanan said to his Talmidim, he said, Yehirat son, may it be God's will that the fear of heaven should be upon you like the fear of another human being. So, and the proof of this is what? When a person is in the middle of an avera, he hopes that nobody will see him. Except that this yira, nikras yira tata. This is called yira tata, the lower level of fear. It's also called yiras chet, the fear of sin. Shekedemes l'hakmosai, which precedes one's acquiring wisdom. Yira Allah, the higher level of fear, yira bucha. That's literally the fear of shame, or what I call insignificance. It's a feeling. It's not a feeling of insignificance. It's not a feeling of afraid of being insignificant. It's the feeling of insignificance, of shame, in the scheme of all things of which you are just a little piece. Because, as we said, the Zohar says, there is fear, and there is fear. Now, what would that mean? That's all the Zohar says. There's fear and there's fear. So we explain that it's the lower level of fear and the upper level of fear. Aval, however, bli yira klal, without any fear at all. Now back to if you don't feel it, remember, even if you don't feel it, you still fulfill the mitzvah. But if you don't feel it, then back to what we said earlier, the avodah doesn't literally fly up above. The aval, neither does not only without fear, but without love. It does. You need two wings to fly. As he brings again the metaphor of the bird. So it isn't sufficient yira. You need love as well. Like a bird is not able to fly upward with one wing. And fear and love are the two wings. As written in the Zohar. And similarly, fear alone, similarly means similar to the mashal, yir alone is one wing. And the bird is not going to fly up above with one wing. Even though that fear alone is called avoidus eved. You are serving as a servant. But it's not sufficient. I mean, again, it's sufficient to be Yotze the mitzvah. But this is not the Ratzon HaElyon in a more fleshed out sense. A more fleshed out sense is that one needs to serve not only as an Eved, but also as a son. And a son means la'orah ava hativis, to arouse the natural love, I'll call upon him. The natural love, at least that natural love, amisateres beliboy, which is hidden in one's heart, that should be revealed in one's brain. I'll call upon him. At least in one's brain. Again, you may not feel it in your heart, but at least it should be there in your thought. To remember one's love of Hashem in one's thought, in one's will, to cling to Hashem, and He may be blessed. And this should be the intentionality that a person has in occupying himself with the Torah or with this mitzvah, to cling to Hashem, nafshe, to cling to his soul, to cling to Hashem, his nefesh elokis vichakiyunis, and his enlivening animal soul, and all their garments, their machshava. This should be the minimal intention, that one's thought and speech and action and one's heart should all be enveloped in the service of Hashem. And that's the first day Yom Tov. Yeah, here, our first day, Yom Tov in America. Okay. Comments, questions? Okay, hand up. Rivka.
Hi. It does. Is there an inherent contradiction in what we just read, where it says earlier, it calls it a avoda gemura, a complete service.
Yeah,
if you just have the intent to serve Hashem, you're doing this.
Right.
You're doing it l'shem shamayim. You're not having love. You're not having fear. You're doing it because there's a God in the world, and I want to do what God wants me to do.
He said there in that part, he's saying you're doing it. You don't have the feeling of it. You don't have the hergish of it. And there he's speaking specifically at that moment about yira. You don't have the hergish in your heart. Don't worry. That's avodah gemura, even if you don't feel it in your heart.
Okay.
But feeling it in your heart causes it to rise up. And that's what he's saying over here. That this is really the Ratzon. The Ratzon of Hashem is that you should feel it, because the feelers and the learning are designed to rise up in order to provoke from our arousal from below and arousal from above.
It says you should at least, even at the end, it says at least become conscious of it in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
The natural love, right?
So
there is natural love, and there is this.
Yeah, see, he takes it in stages. they should be awake. The fear, his subject was fear, so he's talking about that. But fear is only an evet. You also need to be a ben. So correspondingly, just as the fear should be at least awakened in your mind, so also the love should be awakened in your mind. And that's
Okay.
the second
But
part.
that's not necessarily an emotional experience. That's a intellectual.
Well, then he but goes on. And then he goes on.
Okay.
That this ben really, you should feel like a son. You should feel like you have a relation for your father. You should arouse the natural love which is hidden in your heart. That the love which is in your heart should at least be felt in your mind. Lizkera, to remember the love to Hashem, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So you don't have to be, I think maybe your point, you don't have to be aroused in your heart to be fulfilling this, because arousal of the fear in your machshava and the arousal of the love in your machshava, at least that begins to lift you up. You've got two wings, at least in your thought, if indeed you don't have them actively pulsating through your blood, in an active way.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's describing a process here.
Yeah, process. Exactly.
The way I read it is first it talks about Yira, and he says what the Yira's atah is, at least if you're ashamed of another human being looking at you. So that's at least Yira's atah. That's the kind of Yira that we are familiar with. But then he says, but without any Yira at all, you can't fly with one wing. You can't fly with just Ava.
No. Without that Yira, you're not going to be able to fly, because so you need the love, because otherwise
he's saying you can't fly with just Ava. That's what he's saying, because you can't fly with one wing. You need some kind of Yira. If you have all the Ava in the world.
No. He's talking the one wing. The first one wing is Yira, but the bird can't fly with one wing. He also needs Ava. That's the progression.
Okay, so here's
from an Eved to a Ben, from Yira to Ava.
And the first line on page 114, it says, "Aval bli yira klal," but without any yira at all, lo parchal ela be'ava levada. It can't fly up with love.
That's right. You can't fly up with just the love. You need the fear.
Right, because it's like one wing. It's like one. It's just love is one wing.
Love is one wing, and fear is one wing. So he goes back and forth. You can't fly up just with the fear. You need the love. But neither can you fly up with the love without the fear. You need two wings, both ways. Yeah. Okay, ubechein. Let's fly. Let's fly out of this gullus. And tonight we have the opportunity. That's my bechein. But how about somebody else?
Yeah, keep these things in mind during Seder would be beautiful.
Yeah. Now we have a greater opportunity, because in America we have two nights. We can focus one. Yeah.
But we're doing Al Pi Torah.
No. We're both doing Al Pi Torah.
Yeah.
But we are full of Moira Gadol. Tonight is the night of Moira Gadol.
It's
awesome.
Yom Shemarim. Lal Shemarim.
When you have to be careful. That's Yira. Lal Shemarim. You have to be careful.
Watch it. Watch the miracles.
Watch out. Watch your step. And watch the miracles. Yeah. In any case, we should all have a kosher and freilich and Pesach. Yes. It should be kosher and freilich, kosher v'simcha, v'sameach. And we will see you on the other side of the river.
Chag Sameach.
Pesach, kosher v'sameach. Yay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Hashem.